What's going on, guys? It's me, Zach Steele, bringing you guys on a video. So this will be the first video in a series. I'm going to go through and do a mock draft at each draft order from 1 to 12 in PPR drafts and sort of explain to you my thought process and process behind the picks I made in each draft, and sort of give you guys some insight into how I approach drafting and how I um, look to build my roster. As you can see here, I've got my team shown on the left here, and I'll go through the pick history for this mock draft. In this draft, I picked at draft slot 3. So the first two picks were Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook. So here I was really torn between taking Derrick Henry or Travis Kelce. I'm not too keen on Alvin Kamara that high because he really did struggle with Taysom Hill at quarterback last season. I know he had like 1 or 2 great games there, but his production did seem to take quite a hit, and that's not necessarily the fact of the matter is when you're drafting a player this high, they need to perform up to the level that you expect them to. And I do believe there's a world that exists out there where Alvin Kamara underperforms or doesn't meet those expectations. And those are, in general, players I'm looking to avoid. With the same reason I'm going to avoid Saquon Barkley in pretty much all drafts is there's a very real chance that he drastically underperforms what you're paying for him, and that's not something that I'm willing to take a risk on in the first round. So picking between Travis Kelce and Derrick Henry, I ended up going with Kelce because I do strongly believe that you really could make a case for Travis Kelce going number 1 overall. I don't think you can make an argument that there's a single player at his position that's that much better than the guy below him, which I think it's awesome to have Travis Kelce on your roster. Like every single week, I'm going to have a 5-point head start on my opponent at the tight end position. And that's really something that it's going to be hard to come by at any other position. So then if we move into the second round here, there was everyone really went extremely running back heavy. I was sort of hoping that I could get Nick Chubb, Mixon to fall to me at pick 22. But even beyond those two, Clyde Edwards-Helaire and J.K. Dobbins went. So at that point, I was pretty much stuck taking a receiver. I know that it does go very much against the mantra of get your running backs early, and I understand that that is something that I was worried about after making this pick. But I think what's important to recognize is that after J.K. Dobbins, the running backs available were Chris Carson, David Montgomery, and DeAndre Swift. And those aren't really guys that I think are going to move the needle for me like Calvin Ridley. I think taking Calvin Ridley here gives me a legitimate shot at a top 5 fantasy receiver. You saw how well he started the season last year, and he finished it great. And he's shown that he's a number 1 wide receiver. He's not going to, I don't think he'll miss a beat without Julio in that offense. I really do think he's going to have a dominant season. So getting him that late in round 2, I think is a steal, even though it does sort of put me in a hole at the running back position. So fortunately, I was able to hold on and get Chris Carson in round 3 as my first running back. Chris Carson's pretty much the last running back that I think you can get and really trust that you're going to get really solid production out of him all year, assuming he's healthy. That's why I was really happy to get him here. I think he's a lock to be a fringe RB1, RB2 kind of guy. And really, I think what's important to recognize is that in most leagues, you're going to have 2 running backs, 2 or 3 receivers, and a flex. So regardless, you need 2 running backs to perform for you on a week-to-week basis. And even though I spent the first 2 rounds on a tight end and receiver, I'm getting a running back that I can count on around week to week with Chris Carson here. And then all I've got to do is hit on one guy I draft later. And I tend to trust myself to be able to find a guy later on in drafts. I'm not saying I'm going to hit 5 for 5 on the running backs that I draft later, but I'm saying that through the trade market, free agency, or drafting those guys in the later rounds, I think you're going to do just fine getting a second running back. And as long as you get that one guarantee, I don't think it's smart to go 0 running back. But I think as long as you can get yourself one running back that you can trust on week to week, you can be okay. So then we get into round 4 here. And as you can see, I took Josh Allen. Again, I know it does sort of go against the mantra of taking position players first, but I do strongly believe that there's a pretty steep drop-off after Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen he's my QB1 on the season, just ahead of Patrick Mahomes. And if you look, the person before me here took Patrick Mahomes, and I was really hoping I could get Josh Allen at this round 5 pick, but I was worried that if I didn't take him there, I was going to miss on him, and then it was really going to screw with things because at this point, what I'm doing in this draft is I'm going to make sure that I've got a dominant quarterback and a dominant tight end, and then as long as I can piece together a quality roster in the middle there, I'm really going to have such an advantage at those two positions that I'll be fine week to week. And there were plenty of receivers left, like DJ Moore, Godwin, Lockett, Juju, Galladay, Deontay Johnson, CeeDee Lamb, that I was confident that I'd still be able to get my second receiver, taking Josh Allen. And I did want Lockett here, and I was fortunate to see Lockett slip here. So I did manage to get Lockett in round 5, and I was really excited about that. But even if someone had taken Lockett, then I'd have gotten DJ Moore or Chris Godwin, and those are guys that I can still count on week to week, and I would not have felt bad drafting. So I already touched on why I took Lockett here. So then we get into round 6, and at this point, I am starting to think about running back again. Running backs tend to fall off a cliff. Again, here you kind of get this bunch of Kareem Hunt, Chase Edmonds, James Robinson, Mike Davis are sort of 4 running backs, and Travis Etienne, if I'm pronouncing that right, that I think have real potential. But I think that getting Mike Davis here in round 6 is really incredible because he is the number 1 running back in Atlanta, and he showed that he can handle that kind of workload in Carolina last season. So I think getting Mike Davis in round 6, I'm getting a player that I can at least count on to be startable week to week. I'm not expecting him to put up 20 points per game or anything, but I do think that I can rely on him. And at a very minimum, he can sort of hold down the fort while I look to get a stronger running back 2 throughout the season. That's something I was really looking to address after not taking running backs early on. So then here I took T. Higgins in round 7. I needed a third receiver, and he was most certainly the best receiver available. I took him over guys like Robbie Anderson, Deebo Samuel, Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks. I think T. Higgins is the guy that's actually getting pretty underrated right now. He had a great season last year, and I think a lot of people are sort of just forgetting about him in lieu of Jamar Chase. But T. Higgins has shown very real ability to compete in the NFL. There are targets being opened up by the departure of AJ Green. So I think that's sort of more the role that Jamar Chase is going to take. I would expect Jamar Chase to be the number 1 receiver in that offense, especially early on in the season. I think getting T. Higgins here is something you can really be happy about, and he's a guy that I'd be happy to play week to week. So then we get into round 8, and this is where I start getting a little more desperate, quote unquote, for running backs. So I take David Johnson here. David Johnson actually played pretty well last year when healthy. I know he missed a couple games with concussion and all that, but he actually finished the season really strong. I think he had a game with 10 plus receptions and 100 plus receiving yards in there as well. So he's still got enough talent to produce, and he catches the ball enough that I do believe he can be somewhat relevant and on what's going to be a very, very bad Houston team, with or without Deshaun Watson. You need to be able to make sure that your running back can catch the ball, and David Johnson can do that. So I think that his floor is actually kind of safe, and he's a guy that you can play week 1 and he'll get you 10 points. And who knows, maybe that offense surprises, or maybe the depth behind him gets injured, so he starts getting a larger work share. So I do believe that David Johnson's got a nice, pretty safe floor, and he's got a RB2 ceiling. And getting that in round 8, I'd be pretty happy about. So in round 9, I went and snagged Cole Beasley. He's another guy that seems to continuously fly under the radar in the fantasy world. He averaged about like 13 or 14 points per game in fantasy last year. He was very effective. Obviously, there is coming out of him potentially threatening retirement over the vaccination issues and his stance on that. But all things equal, if Cole Beasley's playing, he's a very talented receiver, and that's going to be a very high-powered offense. And I did kind of like stacking him with Josh Allen there. I'm not saying I'd play Cole Beasley week to week here, but I could be excited about playing Allen and Beasley in plus matchups for them. So then in round 10, I went and got Michael Pittman Jr. I've talked about him in a previous video, but I really do expect him to take a huge step forward in that offense this year. I think Carson Wentz is going to really improve the quarterback play on that team. I think Michael Pittman's going to be the number 1 receiver. You can see I actually got him just after T.Y. Hilton. And I don't think T.Y. Hilton has nearly the upside that Michael Pittman Jr. does, and not really even as high of a floor either. I think Michael Pittman's going to get more targets. I think he's going to they're going to get the ball in Michael Pittman's hands a lot. I think it's going to be the Pittman and Jonathan Taylor show in Indianapolis, and I really am excited to get Pittman this late, so I would totally recommend you guys go do the same. Round 11, I took Tariq Cohen. Sort of the same thing as David Johnson, a little bit different, but Tariq Cohen's shown that he can be a really effective fantasy running back. I know David Montgomery had a really great season last year, but Tariq Cohen's going to have a nice safe floor early in the season and going forward. But he catches the ball enough that you can spot start him if you need to, and that's really something that again I was looking to get after passing running backs early, because I want to make sure that I can fill those roster holes as I look to address running back position throughout the season. So it was more of a hedge to take Tariq Cohen here, just so in case I'm wrong about Mike Davis and in case David Johnson is a bust, then I've got Tariq Cohen who can fill in, and I can play him with Carson. I'm going to get some points out of him, and then it'll just kind of hold me over while I look to address that position. So then round 12, I went and took Tony Pollard. You all know what Tony Pollard is. He's the handcuff to Ezekiel Elliott. I personally believe he's extremely talented. He's done great things every time he's gotten the ball in the NFL, and we did see Ezekiel Elliott slow down last season. Obviously, they've got a lot of money invested in Zeke, and I'm not saying Zeke's not talented, but I think there's a world that exists where Pollard's a little bit more involved in that offense. And if Zeke were to get hurt, we know that Alpha offense is going to be extremely explosive. They've got a great offensive line, great receivers, great quarterback. So Pollard really could be a league winner in the absence of Ezekiel Elliott. So getting him this late, especially on a roster that for when drafting running backs, is just really important, I think. So then around 13, I took Jamison Crowder. He's another guy that I think is really flying under the radar. He had a great season last year. He's really the only consistent source of offense in that Jets offense. I know they went out and got Corey Davis, but I do think they're very different players. Corey Davis is going to be the outside threat, and Jamison Crowder is going to be the possession receiver for them. I do expect that offense to improve somewhat. The Jets really can't be any worse than they were last year, and Jamison Crowder made it work despite the situation he was in. So I think that Jamison Crowder is another guy that you can spot start throughout the season. I think he's got a very real chance to be awesome if rookie quarterback plays well. So we get into the next round, and I took Deshaun Watson. You all know what the situation with Deshaun Watson is, but getting him in round 14 as my backup quarterback, I'm happy to drop him come the start of the season if I need to. But if he does end up playing, then I've got a potential top 5 quarterback that I can use as trade bait. I already have Josh Allen, but being able to get that likely of a trade piece this late, and one that I can know pretty instantly that I can drop. I won't have to hold him till week 8 to know whether I need to drop him. I'll know by opening day whether or not I can drop him. I think he's a guy that you can really safely draft at the end of drafts and drop before the first week if he's not playing, or trade if you don't need him. And then, I took defense and kicker. So that's sort of how I approach this draft. I understand it's a little not conventional, but overall, I'm actually pretty happy at this roster. I think that Josh Allen's going to be an elite performer at the quarterback position. Josh Allen and Kelsey will really hold down the fort, and then that along with Ridley, I think I have a very legitimate shot to have the number one player at each of those 3 positions. I'm not saying that I expect Ridley to be the number 1 receiver, but I know he'll be top 10. I can't say no, but I very much expect him to be top 10, and I do even see a world where he's top 5 or even number 1. Lockett, he's kind of a boomer bust guy, but Seahawks are clearly going to score a lot of points. I think that this starting lineup really can go up against anybody, and that's despite not having the top tier running backs. I know that's not something that people are going to tell you to do with the 3rd pick, but I think that really once you miss out on McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook, and even McCaffrey coming off an injury, I don't know how comfortable you are with that. So I could very much justify taking Travis Kelce with the 2nd pick. And even the 1st. So getting him at 3, I don't think is as outrageous as it sounds. I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are really happy to get Kelce even in the mid to late 1st round, because there's a stigma that you don't take tight ends that early. I think that's something that you can really capitalize on. So let me know what you think of this team. Let me know if I'm a horrible drafter and did a really bad job. Let me know what you would have done differently. If you guys have drafted a 3rd overall slot at all this year, let me know how your drafts went and tell me what your teams are, and we can compare. I'll start getting more of these videos pumping out. Sort of fun. I like mock drafting anyway. Might as well let you guys see what I'm doing. It's cool. Thank you guys again so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to me. Means a lot. If you like the content, please be sure to like and subscribe and hit the little bell so that you can get notifications whenever I upload videos. I'll try to start posting more frequently. Got 11 more videos of this series to come out pretty soon, and then I'll start getting into auction stuff, and then we'll take it from there. So thank you guys so much. Have a good one.